I am your host. My co-host, Lisa Derrick, is not here today. She went out into the real world to adopt a cat.
Good for her.
I'm gonna have to carry this whole thing by myself without Lisa. So I brought in a guest whose art you will like, I guarantee. In fact, I offer you a money-back guarantee. If you are not completely satisfied with our guest tonight, you can return this episode to the place you purchased it at for a full refund. All right.
Worth what you paid.
We stream. Oh, hey, well, there's my guest. There he is. My guest today is David Trulli. David is an artist who has been at the center of the Los Angeles art scene for nary a decade.
Over
a decade now.
14 years.
14 years. What caused you to make that big mistake and become an LA art scene artist?
You know, my origin story, if you will, is really...
Let's hear your origin story.
It's really corny.
It doesn't start at conception, though.
No.
We can
no,
speed it up.
It's really corny, but it's honest to God true.
This is honest to God true, but
That's
it's
right.
corny.
It's corny.
Okay.
Okay, so I was a cinematographer for 20-something years in Los Angeles, freelance cinematographer.
Okay.
And it was frustrating for me because I literally got into the business after seeing Citizen Kane as a kid and saying, I want to shoot that. I didn't even want to direct it, I wanted to shoot it. And I was shooting things that were very far removed from Citizen Kane.
What you're saying is you were a cinematographer for movies that we don't necessarily see on Netflix these days.
Yeah, or if you do, you don't necessarily think of them as good.
You don't think okay, but so you were a frustrated artist trapped in a cinematography career.
Right, and the fact is, I mean, I have great respect still for the film industry, but trying to be kind of a pure artist in that business is kind of a fool's errand. I mean, it's a business, I mean, like most things. Okay, skip ahead now. It's the week of September 11th, 2001.
September 11th, 2001. Right. I remember it well.
You remember well, right? And I was freelance, so I was not working that week, so I was hanging out, and I tend to get up really early. I get up at like 5:30 in the morning, and I'm listening to a radio show out of New York, and the people on the air are saying, wow, planes hit the World Trade Tower, but it sounds like an accident,
Okay.
And I'm thinking, well, that's interesting. I know a plane that hit the Empire State Building way back. And
in World War II?
Yeah. And so I thought that's kind of intriguing. So I go into the bedroom, I wake up my wife, and I turn on the TV, and I said, check this out, a plane hit the World Trade Tower. And she gets up, and just as the screen kind of pops on, I'm watching, and I see the second plane hit.
Woo! And then right there, it changes
it's
from...
Exactly. It goes from accident.
You realize we're under attack.
Right.
Okay.
And it just flipped me out. And I have to admit, I did that thing you never are supposed to do. I became the news junkie where 24 hours a day for days.
Oh, yeah.
I was just like,
I
NPR,
think
CNN,
a lot
whatever.
of people did that.
And, in the first hours after the attacks, they were just putting anything on the screen. If they had film, up it went. And so there was nobody was thinking about, oh, maybe we should not show that, you know.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and one of the things that I remember seeing were, you know, very long lens telephoto images of people jumping.
Oh,
from,
yeah,
from
it was
floor.
very controversial in hindsight.
And it played like a loop in my head. I couldn't get that image out of my head, and it was really, really kind of disturbing.
Okay.
Now, to back up just a little bit, to get my artistic frustrations alleviated, I started drawing more, and I started working in Scratchboard, which is my medium of choice. And but I was very green at it. You know, I was just teaching myself by copying wood engravers' works from the 30s and things like that. Anyway, so after about 3 days of that loop of a guy jumping out of the window, you know, was playing through my head, I thought, I'm going to draw this because maybe that'll, like, you know, name the beast, purge the beast kind of thing. You know?
Oh, yeah.
And
very important.
Yeah. So I just took a little piece of Scratchboard cardboard and I scratched this image, and I think you have it here. It's the first.
Let's see if we have the first image. Perhaps.
Yeah.
It will appear.
It's a black and white image labeled number 1. There you go.
Here we go.
And if you can kind of see.
Ah!
Well, if you can get it where I'm not blocking it so
Where's
much.
the control room?
There is a guy.
Oh,
right
no!
There. Yeah, you see the guy. There you go.
Wow.
Now, this is really crudely drawn, and, you know, it was where my skills were, you know, and
oh, there we go. There we go. We have the full image.
So there it is, and I just did that, and honestly, it did sort of help.
Oh, so it did. I mean, the goal was kind of like, I just gotta.
Because, you know, when you're doing Scratchboard too, it's like you're kind of carefully making each scratch, and maybe I should even explain that.
I'm trying to catch the guy.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm trying to catch him.
There you go. There you go. There you go. Catch him.
All right.
But you know, each line is a scratch through black ink to a white layer below.
And that's what the Scratchboard tile is.
Right.
Ceramic.
No, it's a clay-based gesso kind of a thing with black ink on the top. And so I use an X-Acto knife, say, scratch through. You may have done it even when as a little kid with like crayons and popsicle sticks and I don't know. Similar things. But in any event, so I did that, and I kept doing some other images of just stuff. And one day I was on set and I was talking to an art director and telling her about this, and she said, oh, I should bring it in. I'd like to see these things. So I brought it in the next day. You know, just the originals, they're all small. I just brought them in. And she said, you know, there's this gallery in Highland Park, and they're doing an art show of artist responses to 9/11. This is now like 2 months.
2 months after 9/11.
2 months after 9/11.
This is 11/11.
Yeah, or somewhere around there, maybe early October, mid-October or something. But they're doing an artist response. So she tells me about the thing. I go onto the website and I look at the rules for submitting, and it's like submit a slide of your artwork and all that stuff. And I mean, I was brand new to this, and I thought, like, a slide of art, like what? That seems weird, you know.
You know, the slides really ruled the art world.
I know.
You know.
So I bought a roll of slide film, which I normally didn't work with, and I took 2 shots of the piece, and then I sent the roll in to be developed because I was shooting prints all the time. It's like, what am I going to do with the slides? So, you know, I send in a mostly blank roll, and I get back 2 things. I stick 1 slide in an envelope and I send it to them. And they write back or call me back, and they said, we'd like to put your work in the show.
Great.
And then they said, but we'd also like your permission to use your piece as the postcard for the show.
Wow.
And so my very first...
Your first artwork?
First time ever doing it was accepted, and then they put it on the postcard, and I thought, wow,
What was the gallery?
Gallery Figueroa. Jennifer Rowland. I don't know if you remember her.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah, and,
wow, that's okay.
And so, you know, they had the show, and it was fun, and people seemed to really respond to the piece. And so at the end of the opening, or maybe at the end of the show, I can't remember, I went to Jennifer and I said, hey, could I like show you a portfolio of work, like with the idea of showing here? And she said, yes, of course. I said, okay, can you give me 6 months to create a portfolio?
Uh-oh, oh, man.
And she kind of laughed and said, sure. And so I got down to work, and I came up with a portfolio that was about 2/3 photography, pinhole, lensless photography, pinhole, and something called zone plate. So it was all photography where there was no lens involved, just kind of these physical holes. And that, and then 1/3 scratch board. And most of the scratch boards were smallish. And she gave me a solo show.
Wow.
And so I thought, okay, that's cool. So now I'm like reading every website. I probably read something of yours about like what to do. And I made like little posters for my own show, and I would put them in the dry cleaner window. And I honestly, I went kind of nuts.
I love it when an artist doesn't know what to do, because sometimes they do something that works way better.
Well, and I think that actually has served me well over the years. But so I did all this stuff, and I'm driving to the gallery for the opening night, and I'm thinking, no one in the art world knows who the hell I am. I've got this show in a little gallery in Highland Park that's kind of in the middle of nowhere. I don't know, like I'm expecting it could be crickets, like you just walk in and it's my wife and I and some cookies on the table and that's it. And I walk in and there's already people there, and the most expensive pieces in the show are already gone. They're already sold.
Wow.
And
we like the red dots.
Yeah, and the gallery owner is thrilled because, as I later found out, it's like they were struggling, I think.
That doesn't happen every show. So, right away you cut to the front of the line.
Yeah, and so we ended up selling almost everything.
Wow.
And the show. And so I was like, we came away thinking like, that's kind of a sign from God if there ever was one, and I thought... You
don't think 9/11 was a sign from God?
Well, maybe. But the thing about 9/11 is that I kind of came away from it thinking like, wow, the universe is random. People went to work that day, and the last thing you think is going to happen to you is that you're hit by a plane. Honestly, that doesn't come up, and it made me really kind of put into perspective, like, what am I doing with my life? Is this career goal that I formed in my head when I was 13, is that really what I want to do? Do I want to like spend my entire life kind of banging my head against the wall because of the desire of a 13-year-old, or do I need to kind of take stock? And so, it was like, well, let's keep working at this. And so I started putting more effort into the art, a little less effort into lining up jobs in Hollywood.
Okay.
And then after I had my second solo show,
we're at
Gallery 825 had a Bergamot Station annex at the Patricia Correa Gallery.
I recall that well. Yes.
Yeah, and it was the coveted spot. It's like you could either, if you got a solo show, you might have ended up in their La Cienega space, or you could have ended up there.
No,
and
being at Bergamot at the time was like that was the killer space. Yeah.
And this goes back to the idea of when you're too stupid to know what you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
I had sent, I don't know, 2.5 months ahead of time, I sent a press kit for my own show to Christopher Knight, care of the LA Times. That's all I had. I didn't have some personal in or anything like that. It was just like I knew the LA Times main mailing address and I knew his name.
Isn't that how it's done?
And so
Help me out here.
So I sent it to him.
It makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
Until you've been in the art world 10 minutes.
So I sent it to him, and then I don't know, like a few weeks later, I get a call from some reporter guy from the LA Times. Says, "Yeah, we want to interview for an article."
That never happens, and yet it happened.
And then it happened. So he came out and he interviewed me, and he said, "Look, I can never guarantee it's going to be in the paper. It all depends on the news day and everything else." And I thought, okay. And so at that time, the Thursday calendar section in the LA Times was kind of a tabloid kind of style.
They were trying to compete with the LA Weekly there for a while.
And it was like this pull-out section, and it was, because the internet was still a little rough and tumble, it was kind of like what people used as their weekend guide.
Certainly, yes.
So we get the paper delivered, and then, so at 5:30 in the morning, my wife, who's never awake at 5:30 in the morning, is like, go get the paper, So I go out to the front door and grab the paper, and I'm turning it, page by page very carefully, and she's like, hurry up. And I turn the page, and it's a full-page article.
Wow.
And
again, that never happens, and yet it happened.
It happened. 2 pictures, full-page article. And you know, when I was at the show, people would walk in with the article in their hand because they had like clipped it as, oh, let's go see this. And it was, you know, the power of the press was kind of really firmly in my head at that moment. Well, that show was jam-packed, and we sold out the whole show in the opening night.
Gotta love it.
And so that was like, okay, the universe is...
The universe is really saying, David, we had to kill 3,000 people to inspire you to make art.
That's right. I think the universe actually has a very mean sense of humor.
Yes,
when, you know, 15 years later. But in any event, so that led to me eventually. I was working on some show that was just miserable. We were traveling across the country
as a cinematographer.
And it was just like, oh, this is driving me crazy. And I remember being on the phone with my wife, and she says, "Why don't you just come home and be an artist? You're so much happier." And it was like,
now that's a good wife.
Oh, she's wonderful. But so when that job ended, I came home and decided, okay, I'm going to be a full-time artist, which was really naive of me. And I don't know if that was smart or dumb, but it made me a lot happier for sure.
Wow.
And,
now, if you knew everything then that you know now, you wouldn't have made any of these decisions,
probably.
Right? Yeah, because you learned what to do.
I would have gone for the money. I would have just said, where can I make the most money whatsoever, and then get the hell out. No, I don't know.
We would have all gone to Wall Street when we were 20. So,
that's right.
So what are we looking at here?
Well, just to give you an idea of the progression, this was from a piece from that second solo show. And this is called Microwave Sunset. And I've always liked noir, and I've always liked technology. And so you can see, compared to that 9/11 piece, it's a lot more sophisticated. It's still crude, but it's a lot more sophisticated. This was 24 by 36. And so I had really, you know, in the year and a half or whatever between the two shows, I had put a lot of effort into trying to get to be a better artist, you know. And,
as far as mastering your specific, I mean, you basically carved a niche. You became known as the guy who does the scratch board.
Right.
Who else was doing scratch boards at the time? Was there anyone else? And did anybody else ever like, hey, I was doing scratch board? Or how many hundred people told you I had that idea?
I got the scratch board. I've done scratch board before you were born kind of thing a lot.
Oh, wow.
The funny thing is there are a lot of people across the country that do scratchboard. Not a lot of people that show, I'm gonna piss people off, I'm sorry. Not a lot of people that are showing in kind of fine art gallery settings.
So a lot of craft fair scratchboard stuff happens.
Yes, and a lot of illustrators. You know, scratchboard is great for like, if you wanna do photorealistic nature, like you wanna do the fur on a tiger crouching in the brush. Man, it's great for that. You can get that fur on, you know, on the nose and around the eyes. You can get it just perfect, you know. And you can also mimic woodcuts very well with it, where you have broad strokes and big, you know, big slashes, thick scratches away, and things like that. Now, all that work can be wonderful. I'm not trying to diss anybody's work, but I was doing it all wrong by their point of view.
Oh, so there is a way to do scratchboard, and the Scratchboard Society did not approve.
I think, you know, the few people, I don't want to speak for them all, but the few people that I kind of met, it seemed like they were like, you know, and I remember like one time one person kind of said, like after a few shows, saying like, oh, I think I see what you're doing now. Like then it was like, but at first it was, you know, there was a lot of resistance. I was from the movie business, which I think people thought was instantly I'm a poser. Or
you're not really in the art world because you're from the movie business.
I'm self-taught, so you know I can't sit around and discuss, you know, Foucault endlessly with you or something like that.
Oh
yeah. So it was, you know, it was all that stuff. And then this piece was from later on in my career.
This piece was
at Berman.
Now you're showing at Robert Berman Gallery.
Yeah, well, there were some other galleries in between. I showed at Earl McGrath once.
Oh, wow.
I had a solo show at Earl McGrath, and I had a show at Copro Nason.
Oh, wow.
Once. And then I was at Berman, and we did this, and this was a whole show of these like cityscapes, kind of from an interior point of view. And again, I've always been kind of obsessed with sort of obsolete technology. So, you know, there's telephones and things like that. And the work was getting bigger. This one was 40 by 30. And you know, it was getting more and more complicated. Every one of those little windows.
So what year is it in this, pardon me, What year in your development is this exhibit?
Maybe the midpoint, I'd say.
2006?
Yeah, seven, maybe seven.
Okay, so you've been showing now 5 or 6 years now, right?
Yeah. So I've been, and I think, one of the things that I was blessed. I mean, I have to admit that in the movie business, I was able to, make enough money. And my wife works. We don't have kids. That I was able to kind of roll the dice and be a full-time artist. I will say that I think that there are good things and bad things about that. When you're a full-time artist, it's a very solitary existence. You don't have like that office or a film crew to hang around and joke around with. You're in your studio working alone.
Oh yeah, it's a lonely profession.
On the other hand, it's the quickest way to get that 10,000 hours, if you believe in that kind of thing, or whatever.
Okay, the 10,000 hours, as I understand it, is from the book was Blink, right?
Yeah, something. I think it's the idea of you can master anything.
You can master anything if you put 10,000 hours into it.
Yeah.
So, like for example, if you wanted to be a drunk, 10,000 hours of drinking will actually make you like.
That's right. I'm around 8,500.
But I think the guy used the example of the Beatles, like that when they were really, really young, they were working like in Hamburg, Germany. They went on tour and just sat there and played for hours and hours.
Cutting
and
their
hours.
teeth. Yeah.
And they knew melody and they knew their instruments better than the people who had made them or anything.
Right.
Because they had just put in all that time. So putting in 10,000 hours of scratchboarding made you.
Well, it made me better at scratchboard, I think, I don't know if it, I'll tell you, I think that for me, I think an artist, I like an artist with a point of view. I like an artist who's got sort of something to say. It doesn't have to necessarily be a political statement or anything like that, but I like something like that. And so I think you have to have that. You have to have that, and I don't know where that comes from. Maybe it comes from low self-esteem or something. I don't know. But it's out there. But
low self-esteem is often a much better indicator of success than high self-esteem.
That's right. And then the other thing that I have to remind people sometimes is, 20 years as a cinematographer, it may not have been fine art, but I was working with images. I was composing shots. I was lighting sets. And, I tell people about scratchboard. I've always had an affinity for it. And I think it's a lot like lighting a film set. When I would walk onto a soundstage, and the only thing that was on was like the work lights, which, more or less black. You walk on, there's nothing. And then you start adding light. So, okay, there's a window on the set. Let's put a light out the window to mimic the sun. We bring that in. And if you think about drawing with the traditional way, pencil on paper, you start where everything's lit. And you draw shadow, right? And that to me is sort of counterintuitive. Whereas everyone always thinks I'm drawing in negative and it must be hard.
You're actually drawing the light.
I'm drawing the light. It's like, no, it's like, think about it. It's nighttime, the sun rises, now you have light.
Isn't that somehow emulating God? Let there be light.
There you go.
You feel like Genesis with each, the book of Genesis.
So much for low self-esteem, right?
Yeah,
there you go.
Boom, man, that's elevation.
This one is,
where are we here now?
This is called 49th Floor.
This was in your show at Berman, right?
This was another show at Berman.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe it was the same show, actually.
And then now, how big is this piece?
This one is not. It's 24 by 36. The biggest I've ever done is 3 feet or 4 feet by 9 feet.
Do you construct these yourself?
The panels and
stuff?
I have. I don't like doing that, so I usually work on custom panels, and then I ink everything myself. So So they'll come to me with the white layer, and then you just black ink.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, the black ink is layers of.
So tell me about your theme of noir. What is your theme of noir that we see? It's certainly reoccurring. I mean, look, you started with 9/11 as sort of this tragedy, and yet,
Okay, I grew up, even though I grew up in a suburb of New York City. And it was working class household, but it was kind of a family of film buffs. No connection to the movie business, just people who like movies. And so, in New York in the 60s, they would play at 4:30 in the afternoon on like one of the local stations. They would play the same movie 5 days in a row.
Wow.
Yeah, they would just do it because they couldn't afford the licensing. So, you'd see like Abbott and Costello or something like that. Monday through Friday, and I would watch.
So you would
them.
watch the film, and then once you see it 3 or 4 times, you notice nuances that you don't
Right,
see the first
right.
time, and you could break it down.
And
story structure,
yeah, and even things like Twilight Zone. It's like that's so, the chiaroscuro of that lighting and stuff is just, it's amazing. It's these broad strokes, and it's almost gimmicky, and I love that. I love the slash on the eyes and all that kind of stuff. It's great. And so I grew up with a real appreciation of that, Bogart movies and the more hard-boiled noir films that came out of Hollywood. And it's just kind of in me. And yet at the same time, what is noir? It's about alienation. It's about, angst and stress. And it's like, well, what are we dealing with? Right?
What are you dealing with?
We're in a noir world, if there ever was one. So
you're looking at today as noir as the 50s.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. More so maybe. And so I was just, it was just what I gravitated towards, and it's my filter. It's what I look at the world through. And one benefit I was going to mention too about being a cinematographer is when you would go on, say, a location scout, or maybe when you're even just in the middle of shooting, and you're looking at the set, and the director is thinking like, well, what if we put like a wide angle lens like over there, way up in the ceiling or something. Well, I could go and I could get a ladder from the grips, and I could climb up the thing, and I could bring a lens, and I could look through, and I could see, okay, that's what I'm going to see. Well, that's a really slow way to work.
Yes.
And if you start working as a cinematographer, pretty quickly okay, 24 millimeter lens from up there is going to see this. You can project yourself
you
up
actually,
there.
okay.
And so creating a world, like I don't work from photos. So creating a world in my scratchboard, I can do that because I kind of know what it would look like if I had a wide angle lens right behind the telephone, down here looking up there. And so all the perspective, I don't work with vanishing points, I don't draw out all that stuff. The perspective is all done kind of by feel, and everything is just kind of what I think it looks like. And if you were to probably map out all those things, you'd probably find that the perspective is all wrong, and I think that's what gives the picture's life. I think that makes it feel a little more...
To be robotic is pointless.
Right, right.
I mean, it defeats the purpose of that. So we're looking out the window on this. We can see the LA skyline.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of buildings from LA, but it's all just whatever, some imaginary
So that's like
city.
that somebody could yell at you for not being historically or
there's nothing correct about that.
Architecturally or urban planning accurately, but
now this piece is called Daydream, and this was from a show I did at Berman's called In Broad Daylight, and it was the first time I did a whole series set in a day.
It's much more daylight here. You definitely let there be light.
And so like the white areas, and by the way, the white areas, instead of like masking them off and not inking those areas, I took the slow road, which is I just scraped all of the black off. And I like that because when you get it in person, these pieces all get varnished with a gloss varnish, and the light catches in all the little grooves.
So upon examination, we can see that you actually
can see
there's a process.
it's a
little more rewarding for the viewer.
Yeah, it really there's something about the physical object that I think is really nice.
Okay, great. So let's keep moving with the slideshow. You're a prolific artist.
Oh, thank you. Well, this is the piece. This was titled In Broad Daylight. This was 9 feet across.
Wow.
And so you can see the point of view here is from up in the ceiling, above the chandeliers.
You're above the deco chandelier, looking down. You got a desk, and then you're looking out the window on the whole city.
And a lot of these from this series, they were these office interiors that were empty, and like one time we did a shoot when I was in the film business. We did a shoot in Detroit, and there were all these high-rise buildings that just had padlocks on the doors. They were just empty, top to bottom, because that's the economic position of Detroit at that time, and I found that fascinating, and I think, now we talk about people who are left behind by globalism, but I think that the world has just progressed at such a quick pace that there are people who have been left behind by the technological advance throughout the entire century.
Almost left redundant.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So, and I think that those are some themes that I kind of deal with. You know?
And so the noir of today has a harsh economic tone.
Yeah, yeah. And on top of it all, there's something sort of beautiful about cities, but there's also something kind of inhuman about them all, you know. And
oh yeah.
And I get off on all the details, like you can see some of the air conditioners and things like that on the roof.
The AC. Yeah, what's in the desk? You can see what's in the desk.
Yeah, I think I put like a pencil in there or something.
It's there.
like one lone
reward
pencil.
The viewer.
Yeah. But,
so how many scratchboard paintings have you done? Do you have a count?
I do have like a database on my computer where I track them all, but I don't know the number offhand. It's got to be, it's probably like 250.
You're at the 250 mark.
Maybe.
So
but that includes little ones as well as the
okay, no, but in roughly 15 years, you've made 250 scratchboard paintings.
Yeah.
Do you call them paintings? Is that the best way to call them?
I don't know. I usually refer to them as drawings. I guess
drawings.
They show them more. They
you can charge more for paintings.
They're paintings.
If you want to call something a painting or a drawing,
they're paintings.
Did I say drawings? Wants you to charge paintings because he can sell it for more.
I meant paintings.
Ask your dealer.
They're paintings.
Make more money.
They're paintings.
They're paintings. Okay, good, good. So who's on the clothesline here?
Well, this was a piece from my only show that I've ever had in New York City, solo show that I've had in New York City.
Ooh, what gallery was that?
Foley Gallery on the Lower East Side. And this show was called Second Nature. And I was kind of inspired by a short story written by an author named Stephen Milhauser. And in it, there's sort of a simulacrum of life underground. And I was kind of captivated by that whole thing, and I love the fact that we are constantly recreating the natural world. You know, whether like you go to Disney World or something, and it's like we're gonna, or even you just go to some housing development. It's like we're gonna make a lake. Yes. There wasn't a lake here. We're gonna make it. You know, where you go to the Grove, in a shopping center, or Americana in Glendale, and it's like, look, it's an old-timey city street, you know, with a cable car and a thing, and it's all just,
they've destroyed a thing. Well, they paved over paradise.
Yes, and it's just totally this simulation of the real world.
Yes,
and we all kind of dig it, and so I kind of just went further, and I kind of put these things that I see the squares and almost like factory lighting, kind of like what you have, you know, and
kind of like we have here at Dromebox.com.
That's right. So the whole series had this kind of element. I think there's another piece from the show.
Let's see the next piece. Ooh, more squares.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you can see there's trees, there's birds flying, little girl on the swing, and
yet so it's artificial. Yeah. So how was going? Did you triumph in New York?
We did very well. I don't know if we'd call it a triumph because I had the unfortunate luck. So this is where the universe. The universe started really supportive. And then it said, no, we gotta.
Oh, you mean there's negatives to the artwork?
That's right.
Wait. Okay, what would happen?
Well, I'm getting dressed in the hotel room to go to the opening, and I haven't really been paying attention to the news.
Okay.
And I've got the TV on as I'm getting dressed, and they're talking about some really big storm named Hurricane Sandy.
Oh, well, not necessarily.
The next day, New York evacuated. And so all New Yorkers that were in New York on the day of my opening, they were already packing up to leave town.
Wow.
Nobody was, everybody is like battening down the hatches.
How many people showed up at your opening?
It was actually, the gallery wasn't very big and there was a respectable audience, but some of them were friends. And so I don't know, I try not to track that stuff. I think given what it was fine. The bigger problem was that for the next 3 weeks, I think the gallery had no power for a number of weeks, and also the Lower East Side was more or less underwater.
Oh no!
For about a month. So really the gallery is basically, all of New York was really closed for a good portion of the show.
Sorry, we're closed.
That's right.
Last call.
So that was nice. Although we did have a couple sales and one kind of, that piece with the clothesline was kind of a high profile sale, which was nice. And then the gallery took a lot of the work to various art fairs like London and I think he took one of the Houston or Dallas.
Oh, great,
something
great,
like that,
great.
and San Francisco.
You know, I had a booth at the Miami Project Fair this is a couple of years ago, and there was a booth. Half of the booth was devoted to you.
Oh,
what gallery was that?
That was probably Foley.
Was that Foley
Yeah,
Gallery
that was
too?
probably him.
Okay, yeah. Well, they didn't let that hurricane stop them from.
No, it was nice.
from swearing by you.
He was very supportive.
So.
This was a piece from my last show, which is a couple years ago now, by my own
recent
fault,
show.
my most recent show, and this was kind of a big departure for me because I left the kind of more traditional narrative kind of place, and I did this whole series of these fences with ivy. I called the show Event Horizon, and to me there was still a narrative here, and to me there was a beauty here, and I actually think it's some of my favorite work ever. But I think a lot of my own collector base, who really dug the more noir and the more narrative, I think they were a little like confused by it almost. But for me, there's a couple things. Like one is, you know how many things we look at through fences, especially in LA? It's like there's a fence everywhere, and you look at things through fences, and so all of a sudden I started thinking about there's sort of a beauty in the fence. And I love the you know, like to me it almost looks molecular or something, something about the structure of the fence. But this may sound really corny, but it to me, like the white stripes on the other side, the ivy, the fence, it's sort of like the object of your desire, the impediments to that, and the beauty of the struggle. You know, it's kind of you know, the human condition, I guess. You know, but corny maybe, but it's kind of that. And
you know, even with those few cues, you've gone deeper and more elaborate. You've gone more elegant and eloquent than almost all conceptual art. Yeah. And you still have a great picture to deliver us.
Oh, well, thanks.
So I'm looking at it as these things that you're worried about leaving this noir thing. I'm looking at it as a strength. Is this a close-up?
No, this is another piece.
Wow.
And so you see that there were, the white stripes were all the same size in terms of their height. So like this piece was maybe a 24 by 36 piece. The last one was like 36 by 48, something like that. So, but what I did is the stripe, the white stripe would appear at a different level in a painting, but always the same dimension. And when I installed the show, and this is something about Robert Berman that I really appreciate, which is he has always let me install the show in terms of what painting goes where.
Wow.
You know, he's always been really generous about that. He's always been very supportive. And you know, traditionally when you hang a show, it's like, okay, we're going to make everything 55 inches on center from the floor up.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So the center's all lined up. Well, I didn't want to do that. I wanted the white stripe
in each artwork
to line up.
Wow. Okay,
So,
a little conceptual.
and because the stripe is sometimes at the bottom of the piece or sometimes at the top of the piece or in the middle of the piece, that means that every piece was at a different height.
But the white line was...
But the white line, and since the show was named Event Horizon, it formed a horizon line around the entire gallery, which I really liked, and I thought it you know, I hate to use the C word, conceptualism, but it brought a conceptual element to.
Let me tell you, there's a couple C words you can use. You can use conceptualism ahead of. Now let's ask the Event Horizon. Did hanging the show that way help sell the art?
I have no idea. No idea. It was not, you know, I hate to go into sales. It was not the, you know, first opening night sold out show like some of my other shows. But I still think it's
some artists only want to talk about those shows.
That's right. I think
that other show didn't happen.
That's right. I still think it's some of my best work, and I think that it has, you know, it has found a home in some places, and I think that I still have faith. People will find it.
What year was this now?
This was about 2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Yeah.
We could still blame a little bit of that recession. Let's move on to see what we got in the hopper here. Wow.
Now, this is something I've been doing since I've been kind of casting about, trying to figure out what's next. You know, in between shows, there's always a period where I try a little bit of this, I move in this direction, and then at some point something sort of clicks and I keep working at it, and then all of a sudden I'm off and running to the races.
Wow.
And so I've been doing a bunch of things with these large galaxies, and
Playing God again.
Playing God again.
Let there be light.
So, you know, I've been doing it. I'm not sure that I have a cohesive body of work yet. That's one of the reasons I haven't been showing lately is I don't feel like I'm ready. I kind of like to, when I have something where I know, okay, it's not finished, but I know that in 6 months I'm going to have this.
Okay.
I don't quite feel like I've got that yet. So there's a few pieces that I'm kind of playing with.
And this has definitely got a LA, Los Angeles noir thing here. Those are the old light fixtures.
Well, I love LA.
Pretty good. Yeah, okay.
And now this is another piece that I've been doing recently. This is a little larger piece, and it's kind of this, again, this kind of like ruin, mechanized, you know, relic kind of a thing. I don't see it as a plane crash per se, just more like a plane. And
like a kind of antiquated, outdated kind of technology left behind.
And I'm not sure, somehow these pieces, the Galaxy pieces, that, like I do feel like they fit together. I'm not really sure, if you were to say, what's your artist statement? I have to scratch my head on that one, you know.
I get it. Scratch. Oh,
I've never heard that. But I do think that there's something about escaping in general. I think there's something about, you know, certainly the idea of like decay. I mean, the world feels a little frayed at the seams right now, and and you know, there's a good part of me that just wants to say, I'm out. See you guys later. You know, find a beach somewhere, and that's that. And you know, and I know that that's naive, but I think that there is this desire of like a different place to be, you know, and the idea of like okay, so there's like some typical LA bridge with a galaxy behind it. It's like, well, that's not LA, because you don't walk around and see the big spiral galaxy hovering overhead.
Oh yeah.
So
even though it is right there.
That's right. So maybe I want to be on like the alternate universe, Los Angeles. I don't know.
But that's the nature of the artist, though, is to create the illusion of what is desired, as opposed to accepting reality. If you accept reality as it is, you die from reality.
Yeah.
You know.
But you know, it's an interesting place to be for me right now, because I've been, like, on the one hand, I feel like there's a safety zone I could retreat to. You know, I could do like a lot of cityscapes and kind of really go back to like, you know.
You've got a signature style. You've got a collector base. You could be kind of satisfying that niche.
I could do that, and I really don't want to, you know. And I feel like, you know, it's almost like when your favorite rock band releases that terrible jazz album.
Oh yeah.
And I used to always think, oh, what the hell were they thinking? And in a weird way, now I kind of know what they're thinking. I don't really want to make a terrible jazz album, but it's like I feel like
you don't want to make the same greatest hits album.
Yeah, I don't want to just fall back into that trap. And I'm not even sure that works, because sometimes I think when you make art because, oh, this worked before, I'll do it again. I think people intuitively see right through that.
Let's see some more of your greatest hits. Sorry.
So I don't know.
Wow. Well, here's your jazz album.
Here you go. So now this is not Scratchboard.
Okay, this is your newest stuff.
This is my brand new stuff, and this is sort of.
We're filming this live in the summer of 2016.
And I only released this stuff like 2 weeks ago.
Okay, 2 weeks ago, summer of 2016. It was Pokemon. And this.
That's right.
And one of these is a big deal.
Now, now I got to say, the interesting thing about this is I did the work on most of this particular piece. They're all created digitally. They're based on existing artwork, and I had done it like a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And I had done it, you know, and I put it in a computer file, you know, and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting, but I don't really know what it is. And I didn't have the text on it. I just had the image. And so a couple weeks ago, like a month ago, I was going through just cleaning out some old files on the disk, and I saw it, and all of a sudden, like, the meaning of it just smacked me on the head.
Wow.
And it's because I think a year and a half ago, subconsciously, I saw what was coming, but now we're in the middle of it.
We're in the middle of some deep shit.
Right. And so, okay, this is based on this whole series. There's only 5 of them right now, but they're based on the Works Progress Administration posters that were
the WPA during the Depression.
During the Depression, the 30s and the 40s, the government And God bless them, by the way, the government decided that it was important to keep artists
working,
as
opposed to now.
and
Who
even
cares?
and even playwrights and things like that.
yeah.
And so there was a government program, and so they would hire all these artists to do these posters, most of which had to do, they were propaganda in some way, and a lot of it had to do with dragging the country sort of into modernity. Posters that said things like "wash your hands," or "get checked for syphilis," or a lot of those.
Folks, please, that still applies.
Now, all my life, I've loved the artwork of the WPA. I think a lot of people do. It's very strong, bold, graphic kind of stuff. It's kind of fun. But when I looked at this piece again, I realized how authoritarian it looked. And I went and I pulled out my book. You know, I have some books on WPA, and I pulled out, and as I was going through looking at the images, it was amazing how it wasn't like wash your hands. It was wash your hands.
So even though the artist is making this, it really is the government speaking.
It's the government speaking.
The client always appears in the art.
Right.
You know, so.
Meanwhile, around the same time that I'm playing with this idea, I'm talking to somebody about politics, and they were saying how sometimes they wish a benevolent dictator would just come in and just fix it all.
Oh,
they're tired
yeah.
of all the squabbling.
Yeah.
Now we've all had that thought now and then, but dictators always act benevolent at the beginning.
Oh yeah.
And that lasts for like a month. You know what I mean?
A month or two.
Yeah. And so I thought, okay, well, we can see one party in particular, I think, is really gravitating towards the benevolent dictator concept, and I thought this is kind of frightening. It's like we're allowing. It's like, please come in and dominate.
Oh, we're letting it happen.
Yeah.
Because we could just say no, because the people will lead, you know, and so they're kind of acquiescing historically.
Well, you know, nothing drove this point home more for me when at the Republican National Convention, when Donald Trump is saying, "I alone can fix this," and the crowd chants back, "Yes, you will." You know, when Obama was running, it was "Yes, we can," and now it's "Yes, you will." And I thought, oh, does anyone else see the Orwellian nightmare that this represents to me?
So what you're saying is let the aliens take over.
Right. So like there's a tagline on these things that I wrote that says "forcing the world to work," and I meant it like, okay, it could be like work physically, like labor, but it could also be like it's going to work, like it's going to function.
It actually works.
Yeah,
this
like
whole organism it's actually a mechanism that works.
But you know, like when you look at this poster, and the text from this poster is right from the original poster. "Let me do the talking," the big gun, and at the bottom it says "serve in silence." And it's like, you know, that was a battleship gun in the original poster. I turned it into a spaceship.
Like a
gun
spaceship thing.
with a laser thing, you know. But
so our new alien overlords are they're making some propaganda for us to get with the program.
and we're kind of happy with it.
Yeah.
And who knows?
I mean, yeah.
and we think it's going to be okay.
Wow. So now these are not paintings.
These are not paintings. These don't exist in the physical world as originals. The original is a digital file.
Okay.
They are posters. They're a limited edition of 60, signed and numbered.
Oh, so they're just like the WPA. They were posters.
That's right. And so I'm selling them that way. And there's you know, it's like I've taken the original pieces. I've added the spaceships, obviously, and the laser beams, and I've done some other ones. There's one with a waitress. I don't know if we've
Is there one more?
that, or if
Is there one more?
There
she is.
Like this one in the original artwork, she's like carrying a tea set, and I made it this kind of strange atom thing, you know.
Wow.
And I've called the whole series the AWPA, the Alien Works Progress
Administration. So the aliens have come over and they've set up the New Deal.
That's right. Okay. And we're all like, yes, please go ahead, dominate us. We're okay.
Okay. And we're ready to work.
We're ready to work.
Is that the slogan? Ready to work? What?
No, forcing the world to work.
Forcing the world to work.
That's
it's
right.
going to work.
It's going to work.
The whole thing's going to work. Oh boy.
But
how close are we to this?
I don't know. It's pretty.
They could be a couple light years away for all we know.
I know.
Right?
It's frightening. It's frightening. And you know, I've often done some political. You know, I don't like to really always do on the nose political pieces. I have, like you printed in Coagula one time, a piece that I did during the first Obama election campaign.
Okay.
And it was about the Bush administration, and it was called Nightmare Administration, and it was done in the style of a movie poster.
Okay.
And it was all scratch board, and the whole thing was like, you know, you know, they're
Can I get a shot of me patting myself on the back?
there you go.
That?
But like I was very proud of that. Of course, the shelf life of something like that is, you know, the length of the election.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem with politics is the goal, if it works, it becomes outdated.
Right, right.
You know, if you were right.
Yeah, and so, you know, and not that really, you know, influences me, because I really, as much as I've had some great sales over the years, and I do see that as a nice sort of like pat on the back. I appreciate that. I know it's hard for people to part with their money, but I also really, I don't try to chase that. I do only what I want to do, what I feel like I need to draw is what I draw.
A true artist.
Well, I try, you know. I'm a romantic through and through that way.
It's a romantic pursuit.
It is. And but you know, I think I like when the message is a little more coy, or a little, you know,
you want layers just for your own, because you don't want to be, the problem with politics is you don't want to be used.
Right.
You know, that's
right.
First and foremost, wherever you're going. But with all your art, you want layers. I mean, you want things to live on, and they live on in a way sometimes with a layer that maybe even you didn't plan.
Right.
So when you have those loose ends, you know, future generations can tie those together.
And you know, something that I think is interesting, and I think people who aren't artists don't understand this sometimes, which is, like, I've had people ask me at shows, like, does it ever like bother you when people see a different meaning to the work, or don't see the meaning that you attributed to it? And it's like, no, I completely dig that. It's like, I love, like, I'll overhear people talking sometimes, especially if they don't know I'm the artist, and they might be saying what it means to them, and I'll listen, and sometimes I'll think, like, wow,
that's a better idea than you had.
Like, I don't know, like, that never occurred to me, but I love that they see that. I love that they come to that.
Well, the clock's running out. We have come to that.
Wow.
We have come to that point. David Trulli, it was an honor.
Well, thank you
Great
so
conversation.
Thank you.
Always been a big fan, and just, you know, so happy to see that. I love the new work too. That really inspired me. So, hey, we do this every Sunday live at 5 p.m. Pacific time at Dromebox.com. We are archived on YouTube.com. That's a website. ModernArtBlitz.com. You can see all of our episodes. We'll be back next Sunday. Lisa Derrick will be here. I'll be in Las Vegas. Probably lost all my money. I'll be back in 2 weeks. Don't worry. But we will be back next week. And I don't have a tagline.
Woohoo!